You are a woman confined by silence. The air in your chamber smells of damp stone and fading candle wax. Somewhere outside, the ravens stir upon the tower's walls. They know what dawn will bring. The floor beneath your feet trembles with the heartbeat of England itself, waiting for a queen's last breath. Before we step further into history, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? From London, where her ghost still walks the cobblestones? From Madrid? From Lahore? From Sao Paulo? From the farthest corners of a world she could never imagine? It's remarkable, isn't it, how centuries fall away when a single story still binds us. If you're moved by history's echoes, leave a light, a word, a mark, so the tower remembers we were here. Anne Boleyn's final night begins not with terror, but with order. Every movement inside the Queen's apartments is recorded, supervised, rehearsed. The lieutenant of the tower reports that the condemned lady prays often, eats little, and shows more joy in death than sorrow. But beneath that composure is a woman who has seen the full machinery of monarchy turn against her, the court that once cheered her ascent now sharpening its quills to write her extinction. It was never meant to end this way. Once she had been England's revolution, a woman who divided a kingdom and bent a king's faith to her will. But now the same hand that crowned her has signed her death. The tower remembers. Outside her chamber, the chill of May 18, 1536, creeps through the corridors. Guards shift their weight in polished armor. A chaplain rehearses the litany of the dead. Across the river, London lies restless, rumor twisting through taverns and markets. The Queen is to die by sword, not by fire, they whisper. A Frenchman's blade, sharper and swifter than the axe. Even mercy in this court is a calculation. Thomas Cromwell's men have already done their work. The charges, adultery, incest, treason, were inked before her defense could breathe. 5 men have been condemned alongside her, courtiers, poets, musicians. One of them, Mark Smeaton, broke first. Whether through fear or torture, his words gave shape to a lie large enough to kill a queen. And the king, once her champion, seized it eagerly. A sword was summoned before her guilt was proved. Anne walks the floor, tracing the pattern of her steps upon the rushes. Every corner of the room feels both sacred and condemned. She has written her final letter to Henry, pleading not for life, but for fairness. "Never prince had wife more loyal in all duty," she writes, her hand steady. There is no answer, only the sound of the river, black and endless beyond her window. In the lower yard, workers prepare the scaffold. They lay straw thick across the boards to drink the blood. The executioner, a master swordsman from Calais, has already arrived in secret, housed near the chapel. He asked for her forgiveness before dawn, as custom demanded. Anne granted it without hesitation, her voice clear. "I pray, God save the king." To the guards, it sounds like madness. To history, it sounds like grace. But what does grace mean in a kingdom ruled by fear? Each candle flickers against the gray walls, casting her shadow across the chamber. Once, that shadow touched the throne itself, when Henry called her the marrow of my bones, and swore no other woman would bear his son. Now, her crown lies packed away, her jewels divided, her title erased. In its place stands Jane Seymour, the quiet lady-in-waiting already whispered as the next queen. The betrayal is total, almost mechanical. Proof that in Tudor England, affection is an instrument of power, and wives are signatures to be replaced. The clock strikes midnight. Anne kneels before her confessor, tears caught in the folds of her gown. "I have been found guilty," she says softly, "but not by God." Her words hang in the air, unrecorded by the official chroniclers. Outside, the wind shifts, carrying the toll of St. Peter ad Vincula, the chapel that will soon cradle her body. As dawn nears, her composure hardens into something nearly regal. The witnesses later remark upon it: the light in her eyes, the calm of her voice. Some call it courage. Others call it divine certainty. The Tower remembers. Down in the royal apartments at Whitehall, Henry VIII waits for word. He has planned a hunt for the afternoon, the sport of kings, timed to the death of queens. To him, Anne's fall is no tragedy, but a resolution. She had failed to give him a son, and worse, she had learned to speak in the language of power. No king forgives that lesson. By the time the first sunlight crosses the Thames, the executioner's sword glints on its whetstone. The witnesses gather, nobles, ladies, and the few loyal servants who still dare to look upon her face. She dresses simply, gray damask and crimson sleeves, the color of sacrifice. Her hair is bound beneath a linen coif, her neck bare. "Good Christian people," she begins, "I come not to accuse any man, but to die according to the law." Her voice does not falter. History will turn her final breath into legend. Some say the sword struck before she finished praying. Others claim her lips moved even after death, whispering her daughter's name. Elizabeth, the child she will never see grow, will one day wear the crown her mother was denied. A queen cannot be forgotten, only rewritten. And as the morning bells echo across the Tower, the straw darkens beneath the weight of a nation's guilt. The ravens rise again, circling the place where ambition met its blade. The Tower remembers. The morning bells toll like iron hearts, their echoes folding through the fog that clings to the Tower's gray stones. London stirs beneath a shroud of rumor. A queen condemned, a court divided, a king unseen. What is justice when the verdict is written before the trial begins? In the dim corridors where power moves unseen, the sound of scratching quills now replaces the clash of steel. Thomas Cromwell's chamber smells of ink, wax, and cold resolve. The windows are shuttered, not to keep the light out, but to keep the truth from escaping. His desk is a battlefield of parchment, drafts of confessions, sealed letters to Calais, and one unfinished document that will make lawful what has already been decided in the king's heart. The warrant for execution. Cromwell dips his quill into black ink and pauses. History will remember him as the architect of Anne Boleyn's destruction, yet in this moment he feels less like an architect and more like a surgeon, precise, detached, and necessary. "England must not bleed for her sins," he murmurs half to himself, half to the ghosts of policy. But it is not England he saves. It is Henry. Outside, the bells continue, their sound mingling with the chatter of London's markets. The people whisper Anne's name with a kind of terrified reverence. Some curse her for bewitching the king, others pity her for falling from such impossible heights. But none speak too loudly. In Henry's England, silence is safer than truth. Inside Lambeth Palace, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer kneels in private prayer. His hands tremble as he folds them, knowing he has signed away not only Anne's queenship but her very marriage. 2 days before her trial, he had declared her union null and void, a ruling so swift it might have burned the parchment from haste. Cranmer had once baptized her daughter, Elizabeth. He had sworn allegiance to the Queen, and now he kneels before God to explain why he betrayed both. "May it please thee, Lord," he whispers, "that mercy may be found where justice falters." But even in his prayer there is the hollow echo of fear. A sword was summoned before her guilt was proved. At court, the machinery turns faster. Henry VIII, once the gallant suitor who wore Anne's colors in jousts and risked papal wrath to make her his queen, now avoids even speaking her name. His courtiers study his moods like priests reading omens. They know one wrong glance could cost them their heads. Jane Seymour, pale and obedient, waits in the background, the shadow of Anne's replacement already forming before the first widow's tear has fallen. In Cromwell's office, the door creaks open. A young scribe enters, bowing low. "My lord, the charges are ready to be copied." Cromwell doesn't look up. "Read them." The boy's voice trembles. "Adultery with 5 men, conspiracy to murder the king, incest with her brother, Lord Rochford. "Truth is what the king requires it to be," Cromwell replies. "Write it fair, write it fast." The boy hesitates. "And if she is innocent?" Cromwell's quill stops mid-stroke. He finally lifts his eyes. "Then God may judge her, but I must serve the realm." Every word on those pages is another nail in Anne's coffin, yet they are written with the elegance of royal decree. By evening, the wax seals cool, and the documents begin their silent journey across London, from Cromwell's desk to the Tower, from accusation to execution. Bureaucracy becomes weaponry. Meanwhile, within the Tower's cold heart, Anne remains unaware of the final paperwork being prepared. She has stopped asking for mercy. Instead, she speaks softly to her ladies, her voice calm, detached, almost otherworldly. "The king is constant in his course," she says. "Would he were as constant in his affection." The women avert their eyes, unable to meet hers. News travels fast. Too fast for dignity, too slow for hope. By nightfall, courtiers gather in whispered clusters at Whitehall. Some speak of Anne's supposed lovers, others of the king's sudden cheer. The fountains run red with wine, a silent toast to the queen's downfall. The very air seems drunk on betrayal. Cromwell, alone at his table, seals the final letter. The wax hisses as it hardens. "So ends the queen who thought herself untouchable," he says softly, though there's no triumph in it, only fatigue. He rises and walks to the window. The Thames glimmers beneath the moonlight, carrying whispers downstream toward history. Far away, in a quiet nursery, a small child sleeps, Elizabeth, her mother's legacy wrapped in linen. The nurses do not tell her that tonight the quills of men have determined her mother's death. She will wake tomorrow still innocent, still nameless in law, but the blood of Anne Boleyn will already be written into her destiny. In the Tower, the hourglass runs thin. The machinery has done its work. Letters move, seals harden, swords sharpen. The woman who once stood beside the throne now waits beneath it. And as the last candle dies in Cromwell's chamber, the quill that ended a queen lies beside the warrant that will erase her name. Outside, the bells have fallen silent, leaving only the whisper of the river and the memory of what has been set in motion. The Tower remembers, and the sword, still sheathed, hungers for dawn. The morning sun spills across the Tower like a wound slowly opening. The air is bright but cold, sharp with the scent of damp straw and oil from the freshly polished sword. Ravens perch on the battlements, silent, as if even they sense that today history must be still. The courtyard below fills with the muted rustle of fabric and armor. Gentlemen of the court arrive not as mourners, but as witnesses. Every face wears the same uneasy mask, pity disguised as duty. The scaffold, draped in black, gleams faintly where the dew has not yet dried. It is too clean, too deliberate. Death here has been rehearsed. Inside her chamber, Anne Boleyn kneels before a small wooden cross. Her hair has been tucked beneath a linen cap, her gown trimmed of its royal finery. What was once a queen's attire has been reduced to the color of ashes. She murmurs softly, "Jesu, receive my soul," and rises when the guard enters. Her voice is calm, her steps measured. The Tower remembers. As she walks the narrow passage, the sound of her slippers on the stone seems impossibly loud. The same corridor that once echoed with her laughter now hums with finality. The spectators part as she emerges. Not because she demands it, but because they cannot bear to stand too close. The sun catches her face, and for a moment she is luminous. A vision of composure so absolute it unsettles even her executioner. The Frenchman bows low before her, his hands trembling around the hilt of his sword. He had been promised gold for his silence, not peace for his conscience. Anne mounts the steps. Each footfall lands with the precision of ritual. When she turns to face the crowd, the murmur dies entirely. The only sound left is the flap of distant banners. Good Christian people, she begins, her voice carrying clear and unbroken through the morning air. I am come hither to die according to law. I do not accuse any man, nor say anything against the law. I pray God save the king, and give him long reign over you. Her words are impossible, not of bitterness, but of forgiveness. She blesses the man who destroyed her. She praises the king who signed her death. Mercy has become her final act of defiance. For a moment, the crowd seems to sway with something like shame. Even the guards look away. But Anne's gaze remains fixed, not on them, but somewhere past them, beyond the scaffold, beyond the river, beyond fear itself. She kneels. Her hands tremble only once as she removes her necklace and hands it to her attendant. Here, she whispers, there is nothing left to give but this. The woman receiving it weeps, but Anne only smiles faintly. Do not trouble yourself, my good friend, she says. I am very willing to die. The swordsman waits for the sign. 2 assistants tie the blindfold, soft linen against pale skin. Anne refuses it at first, then relents. I pray you, do not strike until I give the word, she says softly, a last act of control over the uncontrollable. A hush falls over the tower green. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell begins to toll, 12 times, slow and uneven, as if time itself falters. The Frenchman steps behind her, moving with the grace of long practice. He calls out to his assistant, Bring me my sword, though it already lies in his hand. It is meant to distract her. She turns her head slightly, the faintest reflex of trust. The blade flashes once, a silver whisper through sunlight, and it is done. A gasp ripples through the witnesses. The body collapses gently forward. The head falls into the straw, hair unbound, blood dark as ink. The silence that follows is not reverent, but stunned, the sound of history realizing what it has just witnessed. A queen cannot be forgotten, only rewritten. They say the Frenchman lifted the head, not in triumph, but in awe, for the eyes seemed almost open, as though still seeing. A linen cloth was placed over it, and the remains were carried to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where the stones were cold and unmarked. No royal tomb, no inscription, just straw, stone, and silence. Yet, outside the tower walls, her story begins to breathe again. Londoners whisper that the wind changed that morning, that even the river paused. At Whitehall, Henry wears white to symbolize rebirth, while Jane Seymour sits silently beside him. The court pretends the air is lighter. It is not. In a quiet nursery far from the tower, a child stirs in her cradle, Elizabeth, barely 3 years old. She will never remember her mother's voice, nor the morning when the crown and the sword met in final silence. But history will remember for her. Through her, Anne's blood will return to the throne that denied her. The sun climbs higher, washing the scaffold in gold. The straw glows like a halo. What was meant to erase a woman instead immortalizes her. The tower's walls, steeped in centuries of screams and secrets, hold her memory like a pulse beneath stone. The wind carries one last whisper, the echo of a life unbroken by death. The tower remembers. And though her body rests beneath nameless stones, her crown, invisible yet unyielding, still gleams in the dust of England's history.